The AMR24 is here. And not only have Aston Martin unveiled their brand new car, but given that their factory is right across the street from Silverstone, they are also the first team in 2024 to shake their car down on track. As lots of you know, I love liveries, and the Aston Martin is ranked in my top 2 or 3 for pretty much the last few years. The team established a really strong brand identity after dropping the BWT Pink in 2022 with their own specific shade of green, and then a few fluoro highlights, which is Aston Martin's signature motorsport colour. Since then, they've pretty much stayed with the same basic livery, albeit with subtle sponsor changes from year to year. I know lots of people are disappointed that we don't see more big changes every single season, and I definitely get that, but these teams value a strong and consistent identity, and I still maintain that for what Aston Martin actually gives us, I think their livery is still one of the strongest every single year. Last year their car looked great in pictures and videos throughout the season, so I've got no doubt that this year's car will look just as good. Compared to last year, Aston Martin have also added more carbon fiber like pretty much most of the other teams. But unlike most of the other teams, they actually designed their liveries really smartly so as to put most of the colour in places where the camera is actually going to look at the car. The two most prominent angles that we see are the head-on shot and the side-on shot as the camera follows a car through a corner. Aston Martin have managed to strategically add as much colour as they could, and the resulting effect is actually more than the sum of its parts. Once again, whether this car will be fighting for wins or just fighting for points, in my opinion, it's going to look good doing so regardless. Looking ahead, I think the team is in a really good place, but the obvious question will be, given that McLaren finished 2023 with all of the momentum and during the off-season have had all of the buzz as potential threats to Red Bull, can Aston Martin swing that pendulum back towards them? Let's not forget that this time last year, absolutely no one would have predicted that in Fernando Alonso's first season at the team, that they would score 8 podiums. Whilst drivers technically can never outdrive their car, you can damn well be sure that Fernando Alonso maximised absolutely every last ounce of the AMR23, finishing 4th in the championship ahead of drivers like Leclerc, Norris and Sainz. The AMR23 is the first car from Aston Martin right from its inception to be designed, tested and manufactured all in their brand new factory. Although their brand new wind tunnel isn't quite up and running yet, this team now has all of the tools and people to be challenging for race wins. But the problem there is that you could also say the same for Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren. Last year, Aston Martin, under technical director Dan Fallows, did a great job of taking many of the concepts from the 2022 Red Bull and combined that with lots of their own ideas to build a really strong car for the start of the season. And now, Mike Crack himself actually said that the team's performance was a little bit inflated last year because of how bad Ferrari and Mercedes were. But more than anything else, the team really struggled to develop their car throughout the season, so much so that in Austin, the two drivers actually ran different specs to test them back to back. The key question for this year is, has the team understood its own car well enough to find more fruitful areas of development, and will their concept with a year's worth of knowledge be quick enough to beat the likes of McLaren, who already switched concepts and developed it better last year, and then also Mercedes and Ferrari, who are only now bringing new cars in 2024. Regardless of how well the team does on track and how much potential it has for the future, I still can't get away from the fact that its driver lineup is the team's biggest limiting factor. Lance Stroll proved last year that even if he is given a podium-capable car, he's just not good enough or consistent enough to challenge the best drivers on the grid. And that's actually okay in a way, because in reality he's not one of the best drivers on the grid. Forget the likes of Hamilton and Leclerc, Stroll isn't even at the level of drivers like Perez, Russell, Sainz or Piastri. And that was proven when last year in a really strong car, he wasn't able to beat these drivers consistently enough. I'm not saying that Lance further down the grid couldn't do a solid job or even that he doesn't belong in Formula 1, but as I've pointed out multiple times, Lance Stroll is at Aston Martin artificially. He's not there based on results, he's there because his dad owns the team. Last year, despite Alonso being 4th in the championship, Aston Martin finished 5th in the Constructors, 22 points behind McLaren. And not only that, but out of the top 5 teams, which makes up half of the grid, Fernando was the only driver to score every single one of the team's podiums. I guarantee that if Perez, Piastri, Ocon, Gasly, Hülkenberg, or even Albon had been at Aston Martin, they would have found those extra 22 points over the course of the season to help Aston Martin beat McLaren. I think what also worried me is the culture at Aston Martin and Mike Crack's blatant denial sometimes of Lance's underperformance. I'm not saying that team principals have to openly criticize their own drivers in the media, or that Mike Crack in general is doing a bad job, because, just to clarify, he absolutely is doing a very good job at Aston Martin. But when a driver is clearly underperforming and fair questions are being asked, there's got to be some kind of accountability. Last year when Lance was going through a really rough patch of getting knocked out of Q1 6 times in a row and having his Qatar incident, Mike Crack blamed everything on bad luck and held no accountability or responsibility on Lance. It was almost as if he was scared to openly criticize his own driver, and whilst I don't want to say that the answer is as simple as his dad is his boss, so what do you expect? Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one, and I just don't think that race teams should operate like this. Whether this is true or not, the power dynamic at Aston Martin looks from the outside like it's totally messed up. And when you include Lance's non-transparent contract situation where, regardless of results and with absolutely no announcement to fans, he just gets given a new contract year after year, if the team continues to underdeliver and not live up to their potential with the resources and really good people that they have, at what point do the other board members have to tell Lawrence Stroll that enough is enough? To say that Alonso carried the team would be a gross understatement. As mentioned earlier, he scored all 8 of the team's podiums, he scored enough points by himself for Aston Martin to finish ahead of Alpine, and even compared to Red Bull, whilst Checo only scored 33.1% of the team's total points, Lance Stroll only scored 24.6% of the team's points. Alonso's contributions, both statistically and financially, are immense to Aston Martin. To all intents and purposes, right now he is Aston Martin. And so it's unsurprising that with both seats available for 2025, the team are trying to lock him down for the next couple of years, with Mike Crack at the launch saying, "We love Fernando, we have a very good relationship with him, he is an integral member of the team. We have a relationship based on trust and openness, and we would be delighted to continue with Fernando into 25 and the year after." However, Fernando is a ruthless operator, always has been and always will be. He knows his value to that team, and now with a Mercedes seat available in 25, he wasn't as committed in his answers. I think it's going to be a question I'll be getting for the first few months of the year. I'm probably attractive to other teams for the performance they saw last year, the commitment, and as I say, there are only 3 world champions on the grid, and for 25, only 1 is available. And now, Fernando Alonso at the best of times is never subtle, and putting his resume on the table whilst also talking about himself in the third person as being currently available for 25 tells you everything you need to know. He made a point to say that his contract talks are going to continue for a few months into the season, which clearly means that unlike the team, he is in absolutely no rush to put pen to paper now with Aston Martin. Unlike Lewis, who specifically signed with Ferrari early without even driving the 2024 Mercedes, Fernando knows that, at least for the time being, with his stock being so high, he has the option of letting things play out and assessing the performance of both Aston Martin and Mercedes, and that regardless of if Toto Wolff is even going to offer him a contract. If Mercedes have a good 24 and look like they'll naturally develop into ready-made title challengers in 25, then Alonso is the only plug-and-play replacement for Hamilton. He is a proven world champion who we know is capable of winning a championship right now, and we also know that from 2023, he doesn't need a year to acclimatize to the team. If he is given a championship-capable car tomorrow, he is going to fight for a title tomorrow. It leaves Aston Martin in a bit of a limbo period at the moment. With the 2 seats they have available, they could have such an exciting driver lineup. Alonso, Tsunoda, Sainz, or even Albon, any combination of those drivers would be incredible. But if Stroll is nailed on at the team, then it will always feel like, unless they build a car that's 1 second faster than the rest of the grid, which I'm sure they'd absolutely love, there will always be a cap on the team's potential when it comes to challenging for podiums, and especially race wins. Ultimately for Fernando, he's kind of in a no-lose scenario at the moment. If Mercedes doesn't offer him the seat and instead go with Antonelli, Aston Martin is still a great team, where as long as Stroll is there, he will always be number one and he will always look good dominating him season after season. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.